Hey guys, welcome to this video. My name is Brendan and today we're going to be talking about hypermobility. Is it a small issue or is it a big issue? Is it a massive problem for your health? And what it actually means and how to tell if you need to correct it and if you can correct it, if you can fix it. But I want to start with a little story today, and the story is about our treadmill at home. We've now into our third treadmill at home. I won't name the company that's involved in the issues, but the first treadmill kept cutting out whilst we were using it. So we'd be on the treadmill and my wife would be doing a class on it, or I'd be doing some running on it, and all of a sudden it would just stop. Turns out with the first treadmill that there was a tiny little cable that was out of place and it was causing it to cut out at a certain incline. And it got me thinking about the nature of how people may see small little problems that prop up in their own health, like aches, pains, niggles. If I think about my own experience with hypermobility, so my thumbs, as you can see here, like really bendy. People often make fun of it. If I give them a thumbs up, they're like, whoa, buddy. At the same time, if I try, and I can't do it that much anymore, but I used to be able to get this part of my elbow all the way over here, and it used to actually bend the other way as well. So my arm would, at the top of my golf swing, my arm would actually look bent in another direction. And that's had implications for my shoulder and my scapula and all sorts of things, which ultimately don't help my chronic pelvic pain syndrome or my issues with my posture. What I'd like to talk about today is why small things add up and the correlation between some of the small things that may have happened in your life. If you're watching this and you're suffering with some hypermobility issues, or you know someone that is, those small things that you think, oh, don't worry, my knees just bend that way and that's just the way they are, or my shoulders have always kind of done that, so I'm just going to accept the way that it is. I'm here to tell you today that those things, ultimately, if they're not hurting you now, if they're not hurting someone right now, they can do. And certainly if they're things that have come up in your past and now you're dealing with a condition where, you've got nerve problems or nerve pain, you've got emotional instability from, and I don't mean that in a nasty way, you've got emotional instability from an anxiety perspective and depression and prone to depression. This is all linked to having hypermobile joints and hypermobile body parts. And can you correct hypermobility? Now, depending on where you go on the internet, you're going to find a mixed bag of answers. Where I tend to operate from is functional patterns, and my experience with functional patterns since doing their 10-week online course and becoming a practitioner and working with clients and working on myself, I've noticed a distinct change in the mobility of my joints. And a lot of people will focus on mobilizing the joint to move the joint. And an example I gave last week on the channel was using this structure, this Tegrity Structure, talking about, the ranges of movement in muscles and how that impacts on the joints. So if you haven't seen that video, do go and check that out. My point was simple. A lot of the time, people make up for a lack of activation in muscles by overusing the joints. And what ends up happening is the tendons and the ligaments become unhappy. And as a result of that, you end up with a nervous system response that sends you various signals. So for me, I know that if my shoulder on my left starts getting a little bit too mobile, you see how much range of movement I've got through this shoulder. If I do the same kind of thing with the right side, it doesn't feel as loose. A lot of that is down to some patterning behaviors in my fascia and in my body from playing golf all my life, actually, funnily enough. I've always had to deal with a big rib cage and compensate and roll around that rib cage or rotate around that rib cage. The point I'm trying to make today with this is that although it might not seem like a big deal, if you've got joints that are unstable and they're moving around and the fascia and the connective tissue in those joints and around those joints is unstable and it's getting used a hell of a lot, but then you've got muscles that aren't contracting or lengthening to the levels that they need to for a healthy muscle, to function, then you're going to have a myriad of issues popping up. So things like thoracic outlet syndrome, I'm seeing quite a lot of. Things like hypermobile knees, hypermobile hips, and a lot of depression in the shoulder blades, and a lot of mismatched control of the shoulder blades and not enough rib cage pressure. These are all things that I start to see with people as I work with people in my practice a lot more, and it's things that I can see are impacting on people's health quite dramatically. So when we talk about sort of hypermobility, what you've got to look to do is stabilize the joints better through corrective exercise, and then relearn the way in which your muscles lengthen and contract, and the tension that's created on those muscles. So this is very much in line with what I was talking about last week about tensegrity, an element of reciprocal inhibition. You've got to look at, if my joints are hypermobile, I am using too much movement through the joints, not enough movement coming from the muscles. The fascia may be fixated in specific positions. At the same time, if we couple that with a stressful job, a stressful life, lots of demands on you from an emotional standpoint, lots of demands on you from a more physical aspect, maybe you get sick and you get run down, maybe your diet's not on point at all, maybe you're overweight or holding an extra 5-10 kilos. All of that can then start to weigh down on your system. And so those hypermobile joints and those hypermobility issues that you were having that weren't a problem when you were younger, now all of a sudden start to become a problem because your body hasn't got the strength within it, literally and figuratively, to uphold against that stress. We talk about results at functional patterns quite a lot, and I'm just going to share some on screen for you at the moment. This particular lady with her elbow positioning, you can see a much better toned, tensioned body, and that tends to be the case with a lot of people that I see and that I work with, and there is a strong link between how these people feel now versus how they used to feel in terms of their hypermobility and their instability. A lot of hypermobility, in my view, leads to severe issues with anxiety, severe issues with depression, severe issues with emotional state, managing that emotional state. And I've been there myself, don't worry, it's not like I'm calling you out. At the same time, the more toned and structured and well-oiled your machine can be, the less grumpy the machine is. Think of an old car versus a new car. Think of a brand new car with a really well-maintained engine versus something that's not been maintained very well. Okay, so just to give you some context there, I mean, the results that I've been seeing with people and with clients in terms of improving this have all come down to just taking an individual approach, looking at a one-to-one movement screening and going through that with them and saying, hey, you know, these muscles are just way too loose or flaccid, and these parts of your body are moving too much. Let's bring it back to the basics. Let's improve your core strength. Let's improve your diet. Let's improve your understanding of joint stability in the areas that you need it, so that when you go out and live your life, and when you go out walking, or when you take the kids out for a walk, the dog for a walk, or when that bad email comes into your inbox, you're in a better place to uphold that with a strength in the body and a strength in the mind. So that's kind of my 2 cents. Go and have a look at Functional Patterns website and have a look at some of the articles on there. Have a look at their page. Have a look at my page on Instagram, because there's some information there. Equally, if you're interested in looking at functional patterns a bit further, there are plenty of options, and I'll link some of them down below for you. But I hope that kind of brings light to the idea that, dealing with hypermobility is about increasing the tensegrity or the tensile structure of the body. And if you haven't seen that video before, go check that out. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great day. Stay strong and keep moving.